The movie begins by introducing Daryn, a high-achieving high school senior with a seemingly perfect life. Daryn is a star athlete, excelling in track and field, and is being groomed for greatness by his ambitious father, Xavier. Xavier has meticulously planned Daryn's future, pushing him to follow a strict regimen of academics and athletics to secure a spot at Harvard. Despite his outward success, it's clear that Daryn's life is heavily controlled. His father's expectations leave little room for Daryn to explore his own passions or individuality. His mother, Catherine, is more supportive and nurturing, but she often takes a backseat to Xavier's domineering influence. One evening, Daryn and his two best friends, Sammy and Kieran, head out to a highly anticipated Big Sean concert. The event is buzzing with excitement, but the trio faces a problem: they don't have tickets. Determined not to miss the performance, they decide to sneak in through the back alley, hoping to find an alternative way inside. As they scout for an entrance, Daryn spots a young woman, Isabelle, walking casually on the roof of the venue. She exudes confidence and a carefree attitude, immediately capturing his attention. Intrigued, Daryn calls out to her, asking for her help in getting them inside. Isabelle smirks, clearly enjoying the situation, and claims she works for the artist. She offers to let them in but demands payment up front. Suddenly, security guards appears and shouts at them to leave. The group scrambles away, but Daryn can't help but look back at Isabelle. He quickly realizes she was bluffing about her connections to Big Sean, but instead of being angry, he finds her boldness and wit refreshing. Later that night, Daryn sits at his desk, finishing up his application to Harvard. After submitting the application, his thoughts drift back to Isabelle. Her mischievous grin and fearless demeanor stand in stark contrast to the monotony of his own life. Compelled by curiosity, he logs onto Facebook and begins searching for her. Despite his best efforts, he can't find any trace of her online. Isabelle's elusiveness only deepens his fascination, and Daryn realizes he's never met anyone quite like her before. The next morning, during his daily jog through the city, Daryn's thoughts are still consumed by Isabelle. As he rounds a corner, he's surprised to see her working at a diner. Excited by the coincidence, Daryn quickly calls his friends for advice on how to approach her. They suggest boldness, so Daryn steps inside the diner and leaves her a generous tip, prompting her and her coworkers to sing a playful tune for the customers. Daryn uses the moment to strike up a conversation and asks for her phone number. Isabelle, unimpressed by his persistence, brushes him off. Undeterred, Daryn improvises and begins rapping for her in front of the entire diner. His lyrics are clever and heartfelt, catching Isabelle off guard. Amused and slightly charmed, she finally agrees to let him walk her home after her shift. In the evening, as they walk through the city streets, Daryn tries to learn more about Isabelle. He asks about her school, but Isabelle deflects, saying she doesn't attend due to personal reasons. Her tone suggests there's more to the story, but Daryn doesn't press further. When they reach her apartment, Daryn is struck by the stark contrast between her modest neighborhood and his own upscale community. Before parting ways, Daryn asks her out on a proper date. Isabelle hesitates, clearly hesitant to let anyone get too close, but Daryn's genuine enthusiasm wins her over. The next day, Daryn's father, Xavier, tells him about an important meeting with the Maxwell family, who are influential members of Harvard's Board of Trustees. Xavier emphasizes the importance of making a good impression and warns Daryn not to be late. The pressure to live up to his father's expectations weighs heavily on Daryn, but he doesn't voice his growing doubts. That evening, Daryn and Isabelle go on their first official date. Isabelle takes him to a lively carnival, a place filled with colorful lights, loud music, and the smell of fried food. It's a world Daryn has never experienced, as his parents have always kept him away from places they deem unsophisticated. Isabelle, however, is in her element. She introduces Daryn to her favorite snacks and insists he try them, teasing him for being so sheltered. While eating, Isabelle asks Daryn what he truly wants out of life. He begins reciting his father's aspirations for him: Harvard, athletics, and success. Isabelle interrupts, pointing out that everything he's described sounds like his father's dreams, not his own. She encourages him to pursue music, noting his talent for rapping, but Daryn brushes off the idea, insisting that making his father proud is his priority. After the date, Daryn rushes to the Maxwell meeting but arrives late, much to Xavier's dismay. The tension between Daryn's obligations and his budding relationship with Isabelle begins to mount. Daryn and Isabelle continue to spend time together, with Daryn even rapping over a beat for her during one of their outings. Their connection deepens, and Daryn starts to see life from a new perspective. One day, Xavier spots Daryn with Isabelle and becomes visibly upset. Later, at home, he confronts Daryn, accusing him of letting a ghetto girl distract him from his goals. Xavier's words are harsh and condescending, leaving Daryn frustrated and conflicted. Determined to prove his commitment, Daryn visits Isabelle at her apartment. He notices photos of a beach on her wall and asks about it. Isabelle explains that the beach has always been her dream destination, a place she imagines as an escape from her struggles. Touched by her vulnerability, Daryn promises to take her there someday. Their connection grows more intimate, and as they share a tender moment, Isabelle leans in to kiss him. However, when Daryn touches her hair, Isabelle abruptly pulls away. Confused and frustrated, Daryn confesses his love for her, but Isabelle becomes emotional. She removes her wig, revealing her bald head, and tells Daryn she has cancer. Overwhelmed, she asks him to leave, leaving Daryn heartbroken and grappling with the weight of her revelation. A few days after Isabelle's emotional confession, Daryn arrives at her apartment with a bouquet of colorful flowers. Refusing to give up, Daryn speaks through the closed door, pouring his heart out. He tells her that her condition or limited time doesn't matter to him and that he wants to be with her no matter what. Inside, Isabelle leans against the door, listening. Her emotions are conflicted, torn between her fear of getting hurt and the sincerity in Daryn's voice. After a long pause, she opens the door again and tells him not to say he loves her because she doesn't believe in love. Daryn steps closer, and kisses her. The next day, Daryn creates a list of activities for him and Isabelle to experience together before the year is over. He shares the plan with his friends, Sammy and Kieran, who listen intently. They tease him lightly but admire his determination to make Isabelle's days as joyful as possible. The next day, Daryn surprises Isabelle with a small birthday celebration at her apartment. The next day, one of the items on Daryn's list is to give Isabelle the experience of graduating, something she'll miss due to her illness. They're complete with a borrowed cap and gown. Isabelle laughs at the absurdity but plays along. The following day, Daryn accompanies Isabelle to her cancer treatments. The hospital's sterile environment feels heavy, but Daryn's presence brings some comfort. He holds her hand throughout the process, whispering words of encouragement and reminding her of her strength. Isabelle tries to mask her fear, but Daryn's unwavering support makes her feel less alone. Wanting to brighten Isabelle's days, Daryn surprises her with a pet fish. That afternoon, Isabelle introduces Daryn to her neighbor, Ron, who lives in the apartment next door. To Daryn's surprise, Ron's place is a fully equipped music studio. Ron encourages Daryn to step into the recording booth and try rapping. Initially nervous, Daryn hesitates, but Isabelle reassures him with a smile and a nod. Feeling her support, Daryn begins to rap, and Ron is impressed by his natural talent. Afterward, Ron hands Daryn a recorded demo, telling him he has potential. That evening, Daryn takes Isabelle to a serene lake at sunset. Daryn kneels and pulls out a ring, proposing to Isabelle. She stares at him, her expression a mix of disbelief and sadness. She tells him it's not romantic to propose to someone who won't be around much longer and that the idea of marriage feels pointless to her. Though her words sting, Daryn respects her feelings and doesn't push further. The next day, Daryn receives a letter from Harvard. His hands tremble as he opens it, reading the words that confirm his worst fear: he has been rejected. He feels the weight of disappointment and dread, knowing how much his father's approval hinges on his acceptance. Unsure of how to face Xavier, Daryn decides to keep the news to himself for now. As Isabelle continues her treatments, her health begins to deteriorate. Simple tasks become exhausting, and her once vibrant energy fades. Daryn steps in to help and offers emotional support. Though she hates feeling dependent, Isabelle is grateful for his unwavering care. Daryn invites Isabelle and Phil to dinner at his family's home. His mother greets them warmly, but Xavier is visibly uncomfortable. During dinner, Xavier's questions grow pointed, particularly about Isabelle's education. Sensing the tension, Daryn quickly lies, saying she's homeschooled. The situation escalates when Daryn admits to being waitlisted at Harvard. Xavier, frustrated, blames Isabelle for distracting him. Phil defends Isabelle, and they leave abruptly, leaving Daryn ashamed and angry at his father. A few weeks later, Daryn and Xavier meet with Mr. Maxwell at Harvard. During the meeting, Mr. Maxwell asks Daryn to share his ambitions. Daryn starts with a rehearsed speech about academics and athletics but quickly shifts to speaking from the heart. He talks about his love for music and how Isabelle has inspired him to follow his passions. Xavier's disappointment is palpable, but Daryn feels a sense of liberation. Apologizing for wasting Mr. Maxwell's time, he leaves the meeting, ready to embrace his own path. Back home, Xavier confronts Daryn, furious about his performance at the meeting. Daryn finally speaks his truth, expressing years of frustration about living under his father's expectations. He admits that he never wanted to go to Harvard and that Isabelle helped him realize he needs to live for himself. Xavier is left speechless as Daryn walks away, finally free of his father's control. The next day, Daryn visits Isabelle to apologize for not standing up for her during dinner. She listens, her emotions softened by his sincerity. When he finishes, she kisses him, and they reconcile. Together, they decide to leave town and create memories that will last a lifetime. Their first stop is an abandoned carnival, where they ride the swings and laugh like carefree kids. The following evening, they attend a Big Sean concert. Isabelle encourages Daryn to give his demo to the artist. When Daryn sneaks into the VIP section, he freezes, overwhelmed by nerves. Big Sean notices him and even takes an interest in his pet hedgehog, but Daryn can't bring himself to hand over the demo. Isabelle is visibly disappointed. Daryn lies to her about what happened, assuming she didn't see him freeze. The next day, Daryn surprises Isabelle by taking her to her biological mother's house. As they pull up, Isabelle's demeanor shifts, and she becomes visibly upset. She glares at Daryn, asking why he would bring her there. Daryn gently insists that she should try to talk to her mother, believing it could bring her closure. Reluctantly, Isabelle steps out of the car. She walks up to the house, her heart pounding. Her mother's eyes widen, but before Isabelle can say much, a young girl, her mother's daughter, comes out the house. Isabelle's mother quickly tells the girl to go back inside and then turns to Isabelle, asking her to leave. The words cut deep, and Isabelle feels a wave of rejection. Once inside, Isabelle lashes out at Daryn, accusing him of pushing her too far. She brings up how he froze when it came to giving Big Sean his demo, questioning if he even knows how to handle his own life. As emotions boil over, Isabelle grabs the steering wheel in frustration, and they lose control of the car. Daryn stumbles out of the car and chases after Isabelle, who walks away in tears. He apologizes profusely, but Isabelle is inconsolable. She admits that seeing her mother's new family made her realize how completely she has been forgotten. Overwhelmed by the pain, Isabelle faints. When Isabelle wakes up, she finds herself back in her apartment, her body weak and fragile. She overhears her nurse talking to Daryn and Phil in hushed tones, saying that Isabelle has little time left. The news weighs heavily on everyone. The next day, Daryn returns to Ron's studio. He pours his emotions into a heartfelt song, expressing his love for Isabelle and the pain of watching her suffer. Ron listens intently, moved by Daryn's raw talent and honesty. When Daryn arrives back at Isabelle's apartment, he finds her convulsing on the floor. His mother, who is visiting, immediately calls 911. At the hospital, the nurse tells them that Isabelle's cancer is spreading rapidly. The news is devastating, but Daryn refuses to give up on her. A few days later, Isabelle's mother visits her apartment. The sight of her mother brings a flood of emotions, and Isabelle breaks down as they embrace. It's a bittersweet moment, filled with both love and unresolved pain. That evening, Isabelle confides in Daryn that she told her mother to leave. She explains that while she appreciates the gesture, she cannot reconcile with someone who abandoned her, especially now that she is dying. Isabelle thanks Daryn for being the one person who has truly loved her unconditionally. Elsewhere, Xavier finds Daryn's demo CD in his room. Curious, he plays it and listens to the heartfelt lyrics. For the first time, he realizes the depth of his son's talent and passion for music. Tears well up as he reflects on how he has been forcing Daryn to chase his dreams rather than his own. That night, Daryn is woken by the sound of Isabelle wheezing. He gently shakes her awake, but she looks at him with soft, tired eyes. She tells him that this is her last moment and that she wants to pass on by his side. Daryn holds her tightly, tears streaming down his face, as Isabelle takes her final breath. At Isabelle's funeral, Daryn is supported by his family and friends. Though heartbroken, he draws strength from the love and memories they shared. A few weeks later, Daryn packs his bags and tells his parents that he is moving to New York to pursue his dream of making music. As he drives away, he turns on the radio and hears his song playing. The DJ announces that the track was requested by Isabelle, a final gift from her to ensure Daryn never stops chasing his dreams. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe for more notifications. Until next time, see you soon.